Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time to have a live stream. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proudly stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're all comfy, cozy, and safe. I didn't have time due to circumstances to advertise uh, my special guest, DJ, which is a little bit unfortunate. I always like to give my special guests uh, a little free publicity whenever I can, but just the way things worked out this time, wasn't able to do it. So you might say this is a little surprise to some of you that DJ is joining me tonight for a good old blether about something or other. So without further ado, because DJ does not need any ado, I'll bring him on straight away. Good evening, DJ.
Well, like, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going not
It's been a
too
long
bad.
time.
It has indeed.
But I think it has. I think the last time I was on the stream by myself was like what 2022 or something. So,
gosh,
was it 2022? It was either 2022 or 2021. So it's been a long time.
It's been a very long time, actually,
Been a long
DJ.
time.
Yeah, well, you did kind of take off when
Yeah.
you got your little dog and you started doing those. And I quite enjoyed them rambling about and just talking the breeze, so to speak. Uh, and then, of course,
Yeah.
other commit.
Well, to be fair, I've had my dog. I had my dog since I was 21. But I mean, like, I didn't really start venturing out in like the wilderness, so to speak, until like the
Yeah,
lockdowns. Really, I had all this spare time on, so I was like, well, why not go out and enjoy the sunshine? But prior to that, he was just sort of curtailed to walks around the estate. So COVID did one thing right, it broadened my dog's horizons. But,
exactly.
yeah,
No, actually, to be, from where I'm sitting, I think that's one of the best things that's happened is introducing those walks with your dog. To be honest, I think
yeah,
over the years you've spent far too much of your valuable time uh, poring over SMB drivel. We know it's an important
yeah.
thing that you do, but it doesn't do much for your mind, my friend.
Oh no, no. I mean, and like I'm one of these people as well, where I don't realize that, like if I'm depressed or down in the dumps, I don't realize it. Like the way that I would describe it is like if somebody was to say to me, "What's wrong with you today? Did you get out the wrong side of the bed this morning?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? I feel fine."
Yeah,
But like I'm obviously exhibiting symptoms of burnout or depression or anger or whatever it may be, but I don't realize until eventually it hits me like a torpedo. And there's been a few instances throughout the years where I've burnt myself out looking at that nonsense, but I've found a sort of happy balance now, to be honest. I'll just the weekends that I'm not with my missus, I'll sort of binge watch or binge read all the stuff that I would ordinarily have like wasted my entire weekend doing every weekend and whatnot. So I find a happy
sure.
balance now.
Well, I'm pleased
But
to hear
no,
that. Well, you certainly sound a lot uh, better than the last time when we spoke, to be honest.
and
I,
that's
I
despite
always,
having the year from I've had a really bad year. It's been one thing after another this year. They all
sure,
started last year in my car.
yeah.
Obviously, the pothole incident, which then I ended up on like the M8 on the way home from Paisley. I was like driving through Glasgow, and I thought that my car would be fine with the inflatable foam, and then my tire burst on the motorway. So then my car got impounded. I had to get a bus home, and then obviously all the money to get up the road. So that was like strike number one. And then I quit my job because of the pay, which was strike number two. Then it was 2 weeks of 2 months of unemployment, couldn't find another job.
Oh,
There's strike number three. What's happened recently? My dog got attacked.
oh,
my
yeah.
dog got attacked. Yeah, like a
Who
couple.
attacked that wee dog?
A pack of dogs attacked my
Oh,
dog.
other dogs, right? Okay.
Yeah, and I was recording one of those rambling Highlander videos as well, and then we came around the corner, and like this pack of about 15 dogs just came at my dog.
Oh,
And I caught the start of it on film, and my poor dog was on the lead, and the lead was wrapped around my hand and that. So I got bit and everything as well. It was savage. He's fine now. It's just
okay.
like one thing after another this year.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
despite it all, I'm fine. Yeah.
Well, I suppose it shows you one thing that you're alive. Yeah.
Uh, but I think though, to your point, what you were getting at there is though, if if this chain of events had happened to me a few years ago, oh my god, like
I,
Jesus! But
I
I've just
dread to
sort of
think.
taken it on the chin. Yeah, same. Same.
I dread to think.
Yeah.
No, you're certainly
No,
a
better.
lot better. And of course,
Oh, definitely.
this good lady who has come into your life has been a huge uh, influence in your emotional state. I saw that very clearly when you came to visit. So
Yeah.
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing her praises on a live stream because I'll get called
No.
a simp and then I'll never hear the end of it by her. You know, oh, what was that you were saying about me? Say it again. All I'll say, if you're lucky enough to find a partner, you know, whether you're a man looking for a female or vice versa, if you're lucky enough to find one, I mean, I'm not one of these people who likes to rub it in people's faces because I was there once myself where I was single and whatnot. Like, you know, if you're lucky enough to find somebody that's compatible, then it really does change a lot of things in your life. You know what I mean? Things that would have got you down. If you've got a partner, it does help a lot. And I mean, my main problem prior to me meeting her, and it still kind of is a problem today, is like I don't have any friends in real life. Like my friends that I've met over the years are people on the internet that I've met a few times. Like I've met Clive or No Chance several times, well, twice, not several. I've met Scott's Armour, and I hope to meet him again soon. But apart from that, you know, like I'd call them my good mates, and they've both disappeared off the internet now. It's just me again. I mean, it's just me. Yeah, Clive's taking a break for a while. And Scott's Armour, he's obviously had his wee baby and that, so he's taking some time away and whatnot. So it's the Sunday with the lads thing that we used to do every Sunday. That's kind of by the by for now. It's just me.
Wow.
But the good thing, John, is that there's one good thing to come out of this. It means that I'm now by far the most popular Scottish nationalist on the internet because those two have disappeared. So technically, you're in the presence of greatness.
Well.
But hope they're doing all right if they're listening at a later date, though.
So, have you been up to anything in particular, or is it just a continuation of what you've already been doing?
No, just working away, mate, to be honest. I mean, the weather, you probably know yourself, the weather's been terrible this year. And usually at weekends, I would go out with my dog and the missus, or I'd go out with my dog by myself, or if I was down at hers, we'd go out places. But the weather's been so crap, so effectively it's just work and then pub the weekend. That's about it. It's nothing to report. It's been dull. Really bad summer this year. I mean, Scotland always rains, but even by our standards, I'd say this has been pretty bad.
Not great at all. You were lucky that time you were through. It was a beautiful day we had, weather-wise.
Yeah, was that May? I think it was May, was it not?
Yeah.
May was quite nice, but June and well, we're almost at the end of July now. It's been a total washout, and it's depressing, really, in all honesty. So hopefully they keep talking about it in the media and that, like, oh, the exact date we're going to get a heat wave, etc., and then it never comes. But you know, fingers crossed for August. You know, maybe things will change.
Yeah. This is a new name here on this channel, Jack London. Now, is that the same Jack London that tees up with
Ragnar? Yeah.
Yeah, Ragnar. Yeah, that's it. Is it? I think it is.
Yeah. JQ. Well, PBC actually offered to watch Europa: The Last Battle with me because I've never seen it. That's when
I used to have it. I used to have it in complete episodes on a USB stick. I gave it out to someone, and I never received it back. It's quite a lot. I think it's about 10 episodes, like 10 hours or so.
Yeah,
it's not you want to be watching all the way through in one go.
No, it's just a big ask, like.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's part of the problem. That's why I've no watched it. I mean, I know enough anyway. And I'm not saying I'm some big brain, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of people out there that could wipe the floor of me in the battle of intellect. But I know enough Like, I don't need to sit and waste 12 hours of my life or 10 hours, whatever it is. I mean, that's how I look at it. I don't have the attention span for that. You know what I mean? I struggle sometimes watching Question Time, for God's sake. Like, that's only an hour. You know? I switch off after a while. I'm like, this is getting boring now. I start clock watching and whatnot. Even if a movie's too long, I'm like that. It's just get
Sure.
fidgety, agitated. So I'd have to watch it like half an hour bouts or side. And if I did it, even if I did it that way with like 10 hours, it would still take me most of the year. But
I think
maybe one.
to be honest, I think it's a question of why would you want to watch it now? I knew why I wanted to watch it. I wanted to add the contents onto what was already in my head if there was anything to be added. That was my main purpose. But I dread to think, I know this is not you, of course, but I dread to think of anyone starting from scratch with such an endeavour. It's far too much. That's what I would say. But if you don't feel as though you need to know anymore, then there's really no point in watching it because you need a purpose. Otherwise, you won't watch it. But that's
Yeah.
always the case, isn't it? I mean, it's always the case. Why would you read a book unless you want to know what the contents are?
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I know there's probably a lot of stuff in there that I don't know. In fact, there's no probability about it. There absolutely will be a lot of stuff and something like that I won't know. And obviously, it'd be good to know, I guess, because then I could, as you to your point there, I could tie that into things that I already know, or I could expand on things I already know and whatnot. But again, I guess that's only really. It's really, I don't know. It's one of those things where is it really necessary? Like, I'm not intending to go out and start debating people. I'm not intending to go out and write a book about my theories and my philosophy. I don't intend to run for political office. And if I have this brand new ammunition from documentaries and whatnot, you know, I'm going to be an absolute intellectual powerhouse, a juggernaut. Like, I just don't think it's necessary, you know. But I do know a lot of people over the years who were sort of my way inclined, and then they've watched this, and then they just go boom, boom, boom with all the facts, and that's great. But if you're doing that, I don't need to do it. You know what I mean?
well,
So
that was the attitude that I took when it came to the SNP, and I would say that on the channel. Well, I don't have to worry about the SNP because I know that DJ's doing all that stuff, so I don't have to.
hi. Scott Sarmer used to call me a walking encyclopedia. You know, anything. Anything. It's Clive, even no. I keep calling him Clive, but like for you know him as no chance. But it's just a bad force of habit now. But he occasionally messages me, and he has done for years. He's like, "What was that politician's name that said insert thing here? Or what was the when did this thing happen?" And about give me 2 minutes, mate. And then I would give him a barrage of information. You know,
Sure, sure.
but
But the point is, the information that's contained in that, I would argue, is not something that's likely to come up in your normal debate. It's
yeah.
just not. It's such a specialist area. And the further we get from the 1940s, the less likely it's ever to come up.
Yeah, it's a valid point. But yeah, if you, I mean, I know you don't use Telegram, but Jesus, if you go into Telegram, it's you're not doing nationalism properly if you're not talking about it 24/7. Like, just shut up, just shut
Oh.
up. It's so
Well, you see,
annoying.
my attitude is, and you've heard me say it before, uh, I personally don't think there's a lot to be learned from that area. There are economic things that we can learn from. and not much else. That's my opinion, because the problems that they faced aren't the same or even like the problems we face today.
Yeah.
So I don't see what's to be gained politically. We don't live in a political system that in any way uh, looks like or feels like the Weimar Republic. So
No.
what is there to be gained?
Even in Britain, I mean, society back then, it was rife for revolution, so to speak. You know, with
Yeah,
the conditions of the everyday working man. People don't live in those conditions anymore. Even the poorest of the poor do not live lives that are even remotely similar to the lives back then and whatnot. So it's
correct.
we live in a different different time, really.
Yeah.
That's not to say, by the way, to anybody, including yourself, that like we shouldn't, like, to your point, learn from these things and whatnot. But
Oh
to sort
no,
of make
no.
that the vocal point of your identity, so to speak, if you're considering yourself in a nationalist context, I'm just like, it bores me a bit. You know, I mean, I'm sort of, I wouldn't say I'm friends, but I'm civil with multiple people on Telegram and whatnot. That's usually where you'll find me. Not that I'm on it that much, and everybody, there's a lot of people with different views and whatnot, and a good portion of them are very much sort of all about the JQ, and I'm like, well, you do that, mate, but that's I agree with them. Don't get me wrong, but it's like it's not. I'm not going to start like making YouTube videos or whatever. Not that I make them much anymore. Going, today we're going to talk about the SNP, but who controls the SNP? Well,
Uh,
let me tell you, it's the, you know, I mean, it's like, like the everyday person is going to turn off from that. You know what I mean?
well,
Uh,
I have said just recently, and I'm sure I'm not the only person, but recently I have said, well, the Jews can't hide behind anything anymore. They have shown
no,
the whole world exactly what they are and who they are. So they cannot play the
yeah,
victim anymore. That's gone, and gone for good. And we should never
oh, it's
let them
absolutely gone. I
try and
agree.
drag it back for what they're doing and what they have already done. So that's my position on it now. All of
No,
that,
I'm with you.
if you like, those discussions have lost any weight for me. They really
Mhm.
have. Because now what is important? Well, they've shown us what they are. They're showing us every bloody day. What is it? 12, 14,000 children killed?
Yeah, half the population of Gaza are under 18 years of age. So, by any metric, a good portion of the civilians that have been killed will have been children. So,
So do
yeah,
I
you're,
need
you're right.
anything else?
No, you
Do I?
don't. No, no, no. I'm with you on that, Ike. But on the flip side to what I was referring to more specifically, about the past is like some people get very like autistic about like people with small hats from like like early 1900s and whatnot. I'm like, it's not relevant. Like, look at today, and then that comes back to your point there. You can like that's self-evident what's going on right now in the Middle East, you know. And a lot of people are waking up to that stuff. You'll be more likely to have a sort of genuine conversation with somebody about that stuff than you are with somebody about some random guy or whatever from like the 1930s. Like, look at this man who ran this, or etc. etc. If that makes sense. But no, I'm waiting on that one, especially on Twitter. Twitter, oh my god, what a difference Twitter is to Facebook. Let's just say that Facebook's very much pussified, whereas Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, oh my days, that's where the fun's at. Like in terms of a lot of people speaking your language, yeah, it has to be said. I mean, there's a lot of people on there. I wouldn't exactly say it's like 100% perfect, but it's definitely a lot better now that Elon Musk has sort of taken over in the sense that a lot more can be said on
Yeah.
that platform now. I wouldn't say it's a total free speech hub, but it's most certainly turned a corner. And as a result, your everyday person, like quite often, things that are going, or they call it trending, it's the equivalent of viral, is a lot of stuff to do with Israel and Zionism and whatnot. A lot of people, a lot of people are noticing, so to speak.
But you see, that's my point. My point is that what they have done has allowed the rest of the world to jump over that fence that has existed
Yeah,
for the last 70 odd years. That fence is no longer there. Why? Because of their own actions. So now we're in a
yeah,
position, the whole world is in a position to criticize, to analyze, and look at these people afresh as we were never able to do before. And that can
mhm.
never be returned to the way it was. That's my point, DJ. And they did
No, no,
it.
I'm way on that one. I'm way on that one. It's a PBC's comment there that they've lifted the veil. Yeah, they did. Yeah, absolutely did. And I thought that's what I was. I think we were singing from the same hymn sheet, but just coming out from a different way. And this, like, I was more meaning that a lot more people are seeing them for what they are and seeing it for what it is as a result
Yeah,
of recent developments, as opposed to some guy watching Europa: The Last Battle and then spouting off about what they've watched on some social media platform. I mean, how many people did that person wake up, as opposed to what their own actions have done to wake people up? So
exactly.
yeah, I'm way on that
No,
one.
yeah, absolutely. And on a sort of personal level, although I don't actually know him personally, but on a sort of personal level, I'm so glad that David Irving is still alive to see all this.
David Irwin.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not
guy
gonna lie,
who
I'm not
they,
sure who that is.
you're not sure who he is.
No, I'd have
Okay.
to see his face. Wait a minute, David. I'm googling him now. Oh, is he? Is he the guy that wrote? He was talking about like the. Oh, I don't even know if you can say the word online. It begins with an H.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. He was
yeah,
one of
yeah, yeah. I know who
the
you're
he
talking
was
about
one
now.
of the early people who put a question mark on it.
Yeah, yeah. I see. I'm bad with names there, but I've seen his face. Aha.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and
He went
then
to
they
court and
set
all that.
out to ruin him, which they did to
Yeah.
ruin. But he has lived long enough to see them unmask themselves to use
Hmm.
BBC's turn of face.
Yeah.
So that's my position on it. So there's very little need, I think, for those discussions about the 1840s, in my view, regarding
No, I'm
nationalism.
way on that.
I always thought there wasn't a lot to be learned. We have different problems that we have to find answers to. Uh,
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do. I mean, it's just.
and you tell me that there's some new person on the block tonight.
Oh, are you talking about well, what I was referring to before we went live?
Yeah. Oh,
I mean, I don't really know the guy that well in terms of who he is. But he was having a debate with Mark Collette tonight. He started a party recently. I think he used to be in PA. He started a party in the last year or so, and forgive me, I don't even know the name of it, to be honest. But he's just, as I say, I mean, Mark Collette, love him or hate him, like he's very, very good at debates. So, kind of made the guy look a bit silly. So, I don't know how the debate concluded because obviously I've come on here because it was still going on
Or was it?
when I turned over. Yeah, that's. I mean, you might get more people jumping in here after it's done, but yeah, National Rebirth Party. That's the name. PVC. Thanks. It's but yeah, I wouldn't even call him a new kid the block. Yeah, he's the same age as me. He's not been around for very long and whatnot. But it's just another one of these like random wee parties that seems to be forming all the time.
I don't mean to. I don't mean to
I
be
mean,
condescending. Of course, I don't.
no, I'm not intending to sound that way. And if I am coming across that way, it's my apologies. But I mean, my position on politics has been the same for years anyway. So I
I
still
know.
like
I know.
more power to you if you want to go down that route and whatnot. I'm not going to poo-poo in your parade, but at the same time, there does come a point where it's when people come across when people put it this way, when people want to start their own party, that's fine, or they want to stand for election, that is fine. But when they start to attack people, and this isn't just directed at him, but just in general, but when they start to attack people like myself, I'm not saying that anybody's named me directly, but anybody like myself who has my belief about politics, like leave me out of your conversations or leave people like me out your conversations, do your own thing. But when they start to attack people like myself, I do feel compelled, albeit I bite my tongue. Most of the time, I do feel sort of compelled to sort of retaliate because it's annoying. Like, because in my belief, a lot of these people are they're naive and they think they're going to change the world, and then when they don't change the world, they berate people like me who could have said from the start, "I told you so." You know, like that's sort of my opinion on it. So more power to him if he wants to do his own thing, but just leave people like me out of your conversations is all I would ask. You know,
Sure.
it's annoying.
Uh,
I find it really frustrating. There's quite a few content creators, a word that I hate online, who believe in the political system. I hate the word content; it's so American. But there's a few, there's a few people online who they believe. I'm even thinking of people from Scotland, by the way. Here, there's a guy who does live streams all the time, and I mean, don't get me started on him, or I'll end up ranting because he redacted. I'm going to swear there, but I'm stopping myself, so I'll say redacted. But
You're doing very well. You're doing
he
very well,
F's me
DJ.
off, John. Okay. However, he keeps going on about people like me, all these people, they sit there and they talk about politics, but they don't do anything. They don't do anything. Like, get out there and vote. I'm like, mate, just stop. Just stop. And I just think that, I don't know. I'll put it this way, because I know I'm sort of rambling and I'm not making sense. I just find these people frustrating. Because it's my personal view that I just don't think that there's a political solution. And at present, anyway, with the way that the system is and whatnot, I shouldn't be lambasted or chastised for my view. I'm not telling anybody else to share my view, but yet the people that are lambasting me and chastising me are expecting everybody, including myself and people like me, to share their view. And I just find that really irritating and one-sided, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I find it frustrating from a different point of view, as you know. But I know very well what your position on politics is. I do.
I will say on this, like, you've never berated me for my view.
No, well, I was just
You've
going
never
to
done.
add that part of the way I am about politics is entirely linked to my generation. I'm very well aware of that. Because when I was growing up, DJ, everybody in my immediate family talked politics. I don't mean in a party political way, but we're always concerned about work-related problems, and that's very much what politics was back then, work-related. So it was inevitable that all us belonging to that generation would grow up with it in our veins, so to speak. And when you went out into the workforce, no matter what job you ended up doing, you were surrounded by it. Politics, again. Every form of employment had its rules, its trade union rules up on the wall. You're supposed to read it and know it. Uh, and so therefore it would be very difficult to escape belonging to my generation. Very difficult to escape from the idea of not being involved in politics to the extent that you would talk about it in the pub. Yeah. And that's how I was brought up, with that. And all my contemporaries were the same. But I realise that that only applies to my generation, because after that, all that was crushed uh, and no longer exists. So the younger people coming after us, it's a whole different workplace for them. They don't get any of that stuff. So they're, to begin with, they're not involved in politics from the workforce. So how are they going to get involved in it? It's a completely different uh, world now for people your age and younger. I see it my own son. He's a bit more because of me, of course. But by and large, young people are really not interested. That's just the truth of it. Sad, but true.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Actually, the more I think about that, I mean, I would say, I mean, people call them the boomer generation and whatnot,
That's right.
rightly or wrongly, but they have a lot more faith in politics. You know, like they're the people that are easily fooled usually by the sort of red meat that will be thrown and whatnot come election cycle periods and whatnot, as opposed to people my age and older or younger. Um, but the other elephant in the room here as well, that this is one of the fundamental reasons for why I genuinely have, for the longest time, felt that politics is sort of a losing game, if I'm being honest. It's demography. Because back in your day, my grand, I mean, don't get me wrong, as I've said before, my granddad, oh God, like, if I could repeat what my granddad used to say, politically speaking, you would be an instantaneous ban on your channel. But enough about that. My point is, though, like, like back in those days, like demography was never really an issue. Like it wasn't an issue, so therefore it wasn't really included in political campaigns and whatnot, because the country up until like the 1960s onwards was like 99.9% white, you know, like, and I'm going for Britain, not just Scotland there, but especially in the last couple of decades, maybe so a bit more in England, like, we'll just say for argument's sake 40 years, but especially the last 20 years, you've got an ever increasing amount of uh, immigration, shall we say, and for any sort of political movement to really gain any traction that's anti-immigration, you're going to run into problems because you've got immigrants who've had children here and their children can vote and whatnot, you know, and it's even worse in Scotland than it is elsewhere. For now, you've got foreign nationals can stand for, or they're wanting right now in Scotland. I put the video on my channel a few weeks ago. They're now wanting foreign nationals and whatnot and refugees to stand for election in our country. They can already vote in our country, so they don't even need to be born here anymore. You can vote in our elections. How the hell do you think you're going to be able to change anything? When, I mean, on a side note, I don't want to go on a tangent because I'm making a good point here, but like anybody that's in the chat right now who's from Scotland in particular, because it's becoming a lot more noticeable here. I know people in England have been dealing with this for a long while, but John, you live close to where my missus is from. down there, like that Glasgow, Paisley, Greenock area, there, especially in the last few years, there's been an absurd amount of African people. I don't know where the hell they're coming from, but they're absolutely everywhere now. You know, I'm starting to see it occasionally up here, but down there, it's ridiculous. We've always had the Pakistanis for the last 50, 60 years or so, right? But like, you know, your proverbial Pakistani shop. Yeah, I'm being politically correct there, you know, and whatnot. But they're everywhere now, like African people, like jet black African people everywhere. Like, where are they coming from? And these people cannot stand in our elections. So, just trying to picture the scene. You're trying to rise to prominence in this, let's just say, Glasgow. So not only do you have to combat the sort of proverbial lefty types and whatnot, that are white woke liberals, if you want to call them that, but you're also now combating a massive influx of immigrants. So if you're standing on a platform that's anti-immigration, you know damn well they're going to vote against you. So it is a form of warfare in many respects because they're importing people that are going to oppose anybody who is against the importation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. That's quite correct. That is what it is. It's a it's a non-violent war. It's not violent at the moment, but it's still a war nevertheless. Uh, the thing that really boggles my mind is the people who do this somehow think that they will always be above it, when in fact they will not. And I'm talking about local councillors who support all this and encourage it all, and they think it won't affect them. Of course, it will very shortly affect them, and they'll be out of a job very soon, and we'll be out of power in our own country, which is what you're talking about. And I
Yeah.
see that very much on the horizon, and not that far away.
Mm-hmm. Because it
Because
starts off as it starts off as diversity quotas. Then it also that ties into what they call proportionate representation. So, for example, and I don't know what the percentages are now in Glasgow off the top of my head, but let's just say it's 25% BAME. Their argument is that 25% of all teachers and all police officers, all councillors should be BAME. So this is their philosophy. This is what they're doing. I mean, we know why they're doing it, but they dress it up with this idea of representation and whatnot. But as their percentage increases in terms of more and more importations and whatnot, that starts to reason that the amount of councillors and whatnot would have to be that way inclined as well. And eventually, what you're going to see is a council that's like 80% BAME because 80% of Glasgow's BAME. So they're not even needing to use force to
no,
take over. They're
no,
just simply using the laws that they're creating themselves. You know what I mean? And that's what baffles me with people sometimes, not all, because I do think a lot of people have good intentions when it comes
I,
to
I,
wanting to like change things. But some of these people, I I wish they would see the wood for the trees, so to speak, including that boy with the silly moustache who was debating Mark earlier on. Like, mate,
who?
like, stop. Yes, that boy that was debating Mark earlier on.
Oh, I see. He's
Yeah,
wearing. Is he
he's
wearing
got a
a sash?
moustache. Yeah, he does. He's got the tash, mate. He's got the tash. Don't ask why. I don't know. It's not exactly great optics, but
Well, I
I
grew
just
it for a joke.
no, I think he's dead serious. Like, I mean, oh
Well,
god,
the thing is, um, this will be a reality. And I'm on the brink, and I have been on the brink of bringing back a topic that used to be used quite a lot in nationalist circles and went away. Don't know why it went away, but it went away. And I'm back on the brink of reviving it. To answer your question. And the answer to your question, and this is the revival of it, is because you've got a lot of low IQ people getting into power. And that's deliberate.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Like, I've watched enough SMP stuff to know that.
Right, you'll be an expert on this. You could point them out.
Yeah, it really could.
You know, there's a big long white wall. Put them all up against the wall, and then just put DJ walk down that row of people, and you just.
Oh, I really could.
Oh, I really could. But you see my point. I mean, this is not a frivolous point.
No.
These are the idiots that are making policy. And they can't see beyond the length of their nose. And some of them have got really short noses.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, some of the nonsense. I mean, I can't speak for Westminster. I don't watch it, but some of the nonsense that you hear in our Parliament, in the Scottish Parliament, I mean, you just shake your head. You're like, how? I mean, and it's the fact they read scripts in our Parliament. Like, their civil servants write them their scripts. They don't even, like, nothing is, like, comes from the heart in our Parliament. They just take, even our debates in our Parliament, for example, they call them debates. And they're not debates, because it'll be literally, like, even, like, First Minister's questions. So now it's John Swinney. So it'll be John Swinney gets asked a question by, let's say, Douglas Ross from the Conservatives, right? So Douglas Ross picks up his A4 piece of paper and he reads out a question. John Swinney picks up his piece of paper, his A4 piece of paper, and responds to the question that that he's just been asked, right? And then it gets worse, because then Douglas Ross will then respond to John Swinney's response, and then it goes back and forth like that, over and over and over and over again, despite, and this is where it's ridiculous, because quite often there'll be like little jokes that have been included in their pieces of paper, so everyone in the pub's like, oh, he starts clapping and whatnot. I'm like, who in the right mind would sit there and they can read all the responses that they've got to read out? Like, no, I'm not saying that. That's what I'd be like. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to be made to look like a fool. I'm not saying that. They don't. They go with it. You know, that's bad enough. That's theatre. But then, obviously, to your point there about the idiots, when you hear some of the stuff they come out with, I know they're reading scripts, but they're just as thick as two short planks, some of them, you know.
But the point is, DJ, someone's writing the scripts, and they're the idiots as well.
I know.
That's the point. I'm talking about, what I'm talking about is an epidemic of idiots. And it's not just that one party. It's everywhere in public life.
Oh, no, you're not wrong there. It's everywhere. Yeah, councils as well. Yeah. Councils level. It's really bad in councils as well. But the other one as well, to your point, I mean, it's when they constantly in our Parliament, they keep bringing up debunked points. Like the gender pay gap, for example. Now, this is a point that has been debunked. It was debunked years ago. The theory that feminists concocted to prove that they were underpaid was debunked. To this day, you still... what happened there? Oh, your camera went out for a second. You still get them bringing it up, the gender pay gap. And there's never any pushback. And they say it so sort of with glacial expressions on their face. I'm like, these people, they're making it to your point, they're making a policy. But the most scary one of all is the climate stuff, because we're expected to believe that these are high IQ intellectuals, and all of these policies that they're passing in behalf of the people to make our life better and make our planet sustainable, they're all retards. Pardon my French. You know,
no,
they don't have a clue what they're talking about. They refer to the science. You expect me to believe they have the foggiest idea of the science that they're pretending to know about it? You expect me to believe that John Swinney is a climatologist? You expected me to believe that Nicola Sturgeon was a climatologist? I mean, come on. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, effectively, you've got activists providing thick people Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think part of what we should be doing, nationalists like ourselves, is showing this low IQ stuff up,
Hmm. Well, just
not
go to my channel,
trying
but
to disprove that there isn't a climate problem. We know there isn't, but leaving that aspect of it aside, just show
Mhm.
up how idiotic it is, and,
Yeah.
and challenge it by saying, "Do you think a 10-year-old would accept this as a piece of science?" Well, I don't think they would.
Yeah. Well,
This is what
that's why.
bothers me, DJ, that our country is being herded towards an awful future by
Yeah.
low IQ people who wouldn't get a job humping coal in a coal mine because it'd be too dangerous to work beside it.
You're not wrong. I mean, that's why. I mean, I don't know how often you frequent my channel. I was going to say frequent there, and I stopped myself, and I've just said it out loud anyway. I
Well,
don't like. I don't know. I don't know why people say that word. By the way, frequent.
no.
It's frequent,
Well,
but
I've what do you call it? I've subbed, so I get
yeah,
sent
yeah.
these short things that you make, right?
Mhm.
And that's what I
Uh,
watch.
I used to make a lot of videos back in the day with commentary. You know, I would whether it was 15-minute video here. I went through a phase where I used to make a lot of videos going through articles, and I would just debunk the article point by point. And then I kind of got bored of that. And part of the reason I got bored of it is because I got bored watching other people doing it. Like, yeah, I don't like that way of doing things. I don't need to hear your opinion on an article. Like, and by common courtesy, I don't expect people to want to hear my opinion on an article. So I've kind of stopped that. And then I moved on a bit to I would make longer style videos where I would go through PDFs, and sometimes it would include videos that would accompany the PDFs or vice versa, whatnot. But over time, I got to a point where I realized it's not really much different to the thing I had a problem with before with the articles. So I've kind of stopped doing that as well now. And now what I kind of do is I just let it come from the horse's mouth. Exactly to your point, Ada. I let it come from the horse's mouth. I don't write misleading titles in my videos. I'll quote something that they've said. Boom, here's the video. Here's your Scottish Nationalist Party, or here's the Tory Party in Scotland. Here's the Labour Party. Look what they've said, and some of the stuff that they say in our parliament, regardless of their script or not, is outrageous. And sadly, quite often my views they do a disservice, to be honest, because some of the stuff I've heard is insane. Whether it's carbon taxes or in just in the context of climate change, carbon taxes, or there's stuff about parking levies, or they want they're wanting to give councils more, the Green Party and whatnot. And there was agreement in Parliament. There was a video I did maybe 2 or 3 months ago. The Green Party talked about in Parliament. They're wanting to give councils more powers to be able to do things like taxation wise, and for the green revolution, all this nonsense. Just let these people say it themselves. you know
Yeah, yeah.
so if people would just watch these videos, I think we'd be in a much better place.
Well, that's what I tried to do when I was canvassing. Take a couple of things and say, "Did you know or did you hear such and such said this?" Uh,
Mhm.
and obviously they hadn't. And I thought that was the best we could hope for at the present time because people are just turned off by it all. And who can blame
Yeah.
them, you know? But I think that's what's wrong throughout the land. And I mean it sincerely. We're dealing with low IQ people
Mhm.
who wouldn't get a job in a coal mine. because they're too dangerous.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I'm weird.
Did you know that did you know that IQ testing? You know who was the first people to try it and use it by
No.
any chance? It's an interesting one. It was actually the British Army. They were the first big organisation to put it into service, so to speak. And what they did was all the conscripts were tested, and all those who went below a certain level were the first ones up against the machine guns.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's how they sorted it out. They got them up first, marched towards the shoot machine guns, and there's your IQ problem solved. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's not.
It's brutal. It's brutal. I mean, I wouldn't like to yield them.
Look, do you see that comment from Anglo?
Oh, he annoys me anyway, but he really
our
annoys
fourth
me.
secretary, you know.
He's beautiful and BAME.
But yes, Anglo, that's exactly what I'm saying.
On a wee side note there, he really annoyed me. Like, he was in office for like 10 minutes and he took to Twitter and whatnot and wherever else to talk about his new role. And within I think it was like 15 words into his video, he brings up the race card. It was, of course he does, yeah. But he made reference to like he's descendants of slavery. Like, oh mate, just shut up! Like,
well, I know how he feels because my descendants wore black shoes as well.
Oh god, but no, you do. I think you've made a. It's not really a point I've highlighted enough myself. In all honesty, if I was to think about it, but that was a very good point about people being dumb as rocks in positions they shouldn't be in. Because even when you think about it, when politicians and whatnot, I mean, as much as I would say that they're actors and whatnot, but sort of taking my bias out of the equation, you would expect politicians and sort of the expectation, even to today, of a politician is they come from some sort of well-to-do grammar school or they've got some sort of background in
something
law or at the very bare minimum they're well educated. But now they're just letting in plonkers, like absolute plonkers. I mean, have you seen the guy? The classic example, John, if you've never seen this guy, is a man from the Labour Party in Scotland called Fajol Chowdhury. I don't know if you've ever heard of this man. He's a vigorous campaigner for rights for refugees and whatnot, because he himself is the child of refugees. The guy can barely speak a lick of English coherently. I mean, there's got to be rules put in place to prohibit this from being the case. That's bad enough. But then obviously I could rattle off some names. I won't do it. I don't want to be a misogynist. But there's plenty of women in our parliament.
Well, I want to just put in a point of order here, and I'm serious now, folks. When I said what I said about coal mining, I was not suggesting for 1 iota that the coal miners were stupid men. I know they weren't. They were brave, hard-working, working-class men, undereducated and overworked. So I don't mean to spoil their memory in any way. That's not what I was meaning. I really should have used that as a cheap joke. So, but my point still stands.
Yes.
And you've got to remember that if we start with town councils, Uh, that was a job that had to be done by men or women, but mainly it was done by men of the town who had a bit of money, who were either uh, self employed or had small businesses where they employed other folk and therefore had time and, as you say, experience, some
Yeah.
education in the formal sense to be able to cope with, well, we've got this budget for such and such. How are we going to spend it? And when Tony Blair brought in the American system, when they all started getting a salary, well, all that went to hell. It just went out the window. Because now any um, political member of a party can be a councillor now. All you've
Mhm.
got to do is turn up for the winter meetings and be seen as a good party member, and you'll likely be nominated for elections. And that's where it's all gone wrong. We've followed this American model,
Mhm.
whereas we, would there be anything wrong, really, by saying, you can't be a town councillor unless you've got, I don't know, let's say a higher national diploma?
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I mean, another way as well to further your point on that is when you look at, and I don't know how the Westminster system's set up. Again, I can only really speak for in the Scottish context. But look at our government at the moment. Every time there's a reshape of the cabinet, so you'll have, for example, look at Hamza Yusuf. So he went from being like transport minister to what was he in charge of after that? Health. He was the health minister, and then he was. I don't know if he was signed after that before he became first minister, or if it was just those two. But then there'd be other people that are in charge of like health, and then they'll get put onto climate and whatnot. You expect me to believe that like people, in theory, people should be ministers of a specific thing if they're experts in said field. How can you jump from transport to health? So you're telling me you've got diplomas and PhDs and all things transport related, and then you're going to jump to health and you're equally as in tune, intellectually speaking, and all things health related. You've
Yeah,
got absolute bampots that are in positions in our government cabinet who have absolutely no place being there whatsoever, which kind of just echoes my point about theatre in many respects, because they're just there in name only. They
yeah,
have to be. They can't be there for any other reason. It's impossible to believe. It's impossible to believe.
exactly. David William is saying they're dumbing down everyone and everything. Been saying it for years. Hence, the texts, talks, etc. The grunt and groans soon enough. They've destroyed communities so folk don't talk anymore in pubs and clubs, etc. Well, that's absolutely correct. And this is again going back to people of my generation. So when people like me
Mm,
finally die off, that'll all be lost. That idea of what used to go on. So David is quite right, of course.
yeah.
And somehow, if we're if we're ever to salvage it, then it would have to. At the moment, the way things are, sad to say, it would have to be salvaged in a formal way, and I don't even like the idea of that. Bringing in academics and all that. That could be even bloody worse. I
Yeah.
mean, it
No
could.
say.
I mean, I've worked beside a lot of academics, DJ, and I tell you, they're just as thick as some of the others. They are, honestly. I wish I
I
was
can believe it.
exaggerating, but I'm not. As I've often said, just because somebody's got a degree doesn't really say they're clever.
Not anymore.
No,
Not
of
anymore.
course
No.
not.
Back in the
No.
day, yeah, I think it stood for something, but not now. I mean, that's not just me adding some sly little cop out for me not going to college or university. Like, I genuinely just don't think it's worth its weight in salt anymore. Really,
Oh,
proofs in
it's
the
not.
pudding. Just look around you. Just look around you. You know what I mean? Uh,
Exactly.
I've had better conversations throughout my time on building sites with lads on building sites than I've ever had with people who have come out of university and whatnot. I truly mean that. You know what I mean? A lot to be said about it now. But these are the people that are apparently qualified now to get into these positions to aid the cause for whatever political party is that they join and whatnot. No. The other worrying thing as well on that is education as well, in and of itself. I mean, we can spend all night talking about education, obviously, and I'm not going to bore people with that. But just one thing I will say is education standards, rankings, and whatnot in Scotland, in particular. Scotland has shot down the educational standard tables. I think it's just above or just below Serbia now. You know, Wales and England, they're starting to slowly increase up the rankings. Scotland's plummeting. You know, so not only do you have thick, thick imbeciles in our government and thick imbeciles in our councils, you've also now got, sadly, the conveyor belt of the youth. Leaving a lot to be desired, sadly.
Can I add one more thing before we get BBC uh, to join us? She's already
Yeah.
here. But I'd like to add this because uh, what I'm about to say is not an opinion, it's based on fact, uh, because I'm basing it on the facts surrounding me and my experience of Glasgow University. Now, when I went there as an undergraduate, there was lots and lots of things I did not know. And a lot of what I did not know was related to how academia itself presented itself to the rest of the world. So, for example, in my last year, I took a junior honours course in Scottish literature. And I was only Scot on the course, believe it or not. But all the other young people who were on this course were all A-list students from their own countries, top-notch students. And the point I'm making is that my qualifications, had I gone to the USA and become a student, I would have been higher than their highest grade. That's how well thought of and how well regarded Glasgow University used to be. Now, that didn't just apply to me, of course, that applied to all the undergraduates with the same levels of success that I had. And so it's dreadful for me to hear what you just said about the university system. It's just dreadful for me to hear that. Yes, Anglo, that's what I'm pointing out. Scotland had the
World
best.
class.
Yeah, it was really, truly world class, Anglo. I could, back then, I could have left Glasgow University and gone to any country in the world
Mhm.
and picked my job.
Yeah.
Well, what you're telling me, DJ, that no longer applies.
Well, I was more on about. Well, I mean, university is a different kettle of fish, but I mean, you know yourself, like the sort of quote, air quote woke BS is sort of taking over most subjects and whatnot. But the PISA rankings is one, and educational rankings overall, the educational standards for primary schools, high schools, it's plummeting. And it's
Yeah, but
on
it's
par
coming
with
down
Serbia.
everywhere.
Yeah. But as I say, like in England, in Wales, it's slowly increasing, but in Scotland, it's plummeting to like being on par with Serbia. There's nothing against Serbia, but when you think of where we were, and now we're in like some Eastern European country, we're on par with them. Come on now.
Exactly.
Not great.
Now,
But
by the way, folks, I wasn't saying all of that to blow my own trumpet. I was just
no,
trying
you
to
come.
factually
Sorry, go on.
show where we are
Yeah.
or where we were.
And you come from a time where our education was at its best. You know, like my grandmother and my grandfather were like superior intellectually to what I could ever dream of being. And that's not me blowing smoke up their assholes. That's me
Yeah.
saying that their education was a lot better back then. Even the way that it used to work back then, you know, like even if you weren't sort of deemed smart enough to go to higher education, they just booted you straight into a trade and whatnot. They don't do anything like that now. Nothing
No.
at all.
No.
You know? Hello, PBC.
Hello there, BBC.
Hello.
Welcome to this live stream.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on.
Not at all. It's my pleasure. I'm sure you've enjoyed how lively it is.
I have. And what you were saying about Glasgow Uni, having like a name for itself, and if you were from there, you'd get a heads up. It used to be the same with my high school. You know which high school I went to because we spoke about it.
Yeah.
And Paisley Grammar used to be known as one of the better schools.
Oh,
And
yeah.
It's gone downhill, obviously, in the last 20 years or whatever, because they closed a few schools, they merged them, and it just became another school. But prior to that, if you had that on your CV, that would open doors for you, and it would make a difference to people applying for jobs. And that's just a school, because it did have that prestige.
Absolutely. I saw it for myself plenty of times. Helen would pick up the phone, ring any of the banks, any of them. I say, I'm looking for a job, and they would take your name and what school did you go to? Paisley Grammar. When can you start?
It was a good school, and it did turn out quite a lot of good people.
Yeah. And I'm not saying,
one of the
Helen
boys-
was no brain of Britain, that's for sure. But that school, as you rightly said, had a reputation that meant something.
One of the boys that went to school with me, it came up on Facebook about a month ago. These recommended friends or people you may know, and it was his brother. So that I'd not thought about this guy for years. Clicked on it, and his brother came up, and I was in school with a brother. He's now running. I think it's JP Morgan.
No,
This guy.
good.
So he was in my class in school, and he's running a bank, like a multinational bank.
Yeah, commercial bank.
Aye. But
Wow.
it used to open doors, and as I was saying in the comments earlier, like I signed up for an evening class just for myself to do something. I wanted to sort of learn photography. I know that's an interest that you've got, and DJ shares the same interest as well with taking photos, but I want to be able to use a camera properly, like a proper
Sure.
camera,
Sure.
rather than taking my phone, because I think nowadays especially we're too attached to phones, and I want to try and leave the phone a bit and get away
No.
from that.
If
and
you're
just
serious about photography, you need a camera.
Aye. So that's
And you'll still not be as good as me with my
you
phone.
can shush.
I take some very good photos with just a camera, with a phone camera, by the way.
Who took that picture that's in your avatar?
Yeah, but that was
And that was me.
I decided for that photo to be taken. But I'm just saying, go through my wee Telegram channel. It's quite sad, really, my wee Telegram channel called Achukter and his dog, by the way, because I've barely been anywhere this year because the weather's been so crap. But you know, there's some pretty damn good photos in there from over the years, like that I would say match anybody with a camera. Just saying. But sorry to derail you there.
Yeah,
Are you, are you sure you want to say that in front of me?
well,
Absolutely, yes. I'm telling you, mate. There's not all of them, but there's at least 5 or 6 that I can think off the top of my head that are like, wow. Like I surprised myself. To be fair, though, it's not so much. I'm not one of these pompous idiots who thinks it's my skills with the phone, albeit I like to wind her up about it. It's just the scenery. Like sometimes the scenery speaks for itself. And I mean, it'd be great to have like a camera, like a proper good
a
camera, to
decent one.
pick up every fine detail. Don't get me wrong, but from what the camera on my phone has been able to pick up over the years, I've captured some beautiful things there, and it's just happenstance. It's just being there. You know, for
Um,
example, one off the top of my head is I was away at a loch a few years ago, and I decided to take a detour um, down the sidetrack road that I thought was like public land and whatnot, but it turned out to be a house at the bottom. So I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? So I picked up my dog because my dog was off the lead. And then I sort of made a beeline through the sort of shrubbery that was next to this guy's house. And then I heard his back door opening or his front door, whatever, and dogs barking. I was like, oh no. Like I started getting panic thinking, oh no, he's going to come after me with a shotgun or something. So I start running, I put my dog off my shoulder like fireman's carry, you know. And then I ended up coming to a clearing when the sun was starting to set. It was autumn, and there was this broken down barn that was just there next to a loch. There was a random loch, like a big loch there, and the sun was starting to set. So I put my dog in the lead and I tied the lead to the tree, got a photo of it. And I mean, I could find the photo. It would take me a bit of time, probably, but it's because it's on that channel. What the best photo I've ever taken? Best photo I've ever taken.
well, I would make the point to anyone and everyone is the measure of a photographer is a photographer knows why he took the photograph and how it was achieved. That's the measure of a true photographer. My lecturer at college said he defined a professional photographer as you get 2 photographers, you get 2 rolls of film, 36 exposures in each roll of film. What is the difference between the professional and the amateur? Well, the difference is the professional will get 35 excellent photographs and the amateur will get 1. That's the difference. And
You call me an
this,
amateur, John. What are you saying? I would say, to counter your point,
I do actually have a degree in photography, you know. I
I'm not
do.
saying you don't. I'm saying no. I'm going to disagree with your point. And by the way, this does make me by default, by my point here, an amateur. I would say what makes the difference between a photographer, an amateur photographer, and like a legit photographer are the people that have the patience to sit there for hours and wait for the perfect shot. The people that will go to a location when it's dark and wait for the sun to come up, or the people that will trek umpteen miles up a mountain, knowing that they're going to get there at a specific time to capture the sun at a specific time of the day and whatnot. I would say that they're miles above any guy that picks up a camera and goes for a walk and gets a nice couple of photos of thistles and sunsets. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah,
that's what makes
yeah.
a superior photographer, really. It's not just about your skills with being able to place the camera and whatnot and get the perfect lighting. I'd say it's about your commitment and whatnot. And yeah, go on hikes and whatnot, but I would never say I'm a photographer, like just putting it out there. But these people that'll sit there for hours and wait for, and they'll get multiple photos throughout that point just to get the perfect photo. I mean, fair play to these people. Same as stargazers and whatnot, you know, the ones that'll sit out all night waiting for like the northern lights and whatnot. I mean, wow, patience that they've got.
Absolutely. That's another hobby of mine, of course.
Yeah, I love the stars as well, to be fair.
Yeah. But Mr. Cook, who used to run this department, he was a mountaineer, and all of his photographs were him going up mountains. And he was world famous, of course, because his photographs went into magazines all over the world at that time. Brilliant stuff. And that was his way of defining a professional. But the cameras that are built into cameras, into phones, beg your pardon, have taken a lot of the skill out of it. Sad to say. And now anybody and everyone thinks that they're a photographer. But it is good that people have learned to produce a better quality snap than ever before. I think it's a good thing.
See, I wanted a hobby that I could do that's, if I'm at a walk somewhere, I can take a nice picture and capture what I'm seeing, because there's no guarantees you're going to go back to that spot or see that same thing. Even some of the places that we've been in the past year, when you go back a second time, it's completely different. It just looks so different from season to season.
Absolutely.
Even
I couldn't agree more.
from month
BBC.
to month. Like, there's been bits where maybe the water's come out, or the water's receded, or it's frozen, or the overgrowth of the foliage and stuff run about. Like, constantly changing scenery. You're only seeing it. It's a snapshot for a reason, because it's still in time, 1 second in time.
That's
you're
it.
capturing what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And I would like to be able to take better pictures, even just of my kids. If I learn how to master using the camera and take better pictures of my kids, if I don't get anything else out of the course, at least I'll have learned that.
Sure.
So
I used to actually teach photography at one point in Reed Care College.
well, I looked there. They don't do night courses. They do because I done a media production course years ago. In photography, it was back when you had dark rooms and you still had the
That was
film.
wet processing. Yeah.
Yep. So we had maybe a module or two of that, but I left before the end of it because there was family stuff going on. So I never finished the last term. I would consider going back and doing it now, but I would need to learn how to work a digital camera. I'd need to learn how to do editing, because it's something I don't do, is edit photos. Any pictures I've uploaded anywhere, it's just been straight from, at first, my phone, but I do want to get a proper camera and be able to use that camera and learn what all the functions of the camera are for, rather than just pointing and shooting and taking a lucky shot in the dark. Because sometimes you drive about and you think, oh, if I had a camera right now, you see things and you wish.
Exactly.
Especially like in the spring, I kept seeing all these like cherry blossom trees everywhere, and just as they came into bloom, I wished I had a camera so I could capture them, but unluckily I never had one. Just in my phone.
I am the worst for that. Like, see if my dog could talk. I swear to God, and I won't use expletives, but you get the point here. He'd be like, "Will you take me home? Will you know what I mean?" I can just picture it now, because quite often I don't do it so much when I'm with PBC, but like I don't really do it at all, to be honest. But like when I'm with just me and my dog, if I'm going somewhere, like usually like the locks and stuff that I go to, There's a lot of like single track roads. And it's away out in the countryside, obviously, because where I live, and it's like every 2 minutes. Oh, I'll stop here at a passerby place, and I get a couple more photos. And I mean, sometimes I like look back at my dog, and he's just like staring at me, like, "Will you just stop?" I can't help it. I'll end up with like 40 photos, and I've not even got to my location, or I've not even got home yet. I can't help myself. I just get completely fascinated with nature.
See that?
Dare I say?
Is that film?
It's
Film.
film. It's Kodak
Ooh.
Tri-X Pan. That's film that's waiting to be processed.
Hmm.
It'll never
Old
be
school.
processed, of course, because I can't get hold of the chemicals anymore.
Can you not take it somewhere that will do it? There's still places that do the wet developing.
I think there's there's one left. I think one professional lab left. But
I think film will come back in the same way that vinyl's made a resurgence because it
the thing is,
produced a
it's never
different
going to.
quality.
Film actually has never gone away. The
It's just
thing
more
is,
difficult.
it's much more expensive, and it's now, thankfully, finally, no longer aimed at the amateur. For too long, photography was driven by the amateur user, and it brought in a lot of products that were pretty awful, to be honest. I don't know how well either of you remember the photographs that were up in my kitchen.
I can remember some of them.
Yeah, well, they were processed, they were actually printed on what is known as art paper. And at that time, now I'm going back to the 1970s, yeah, late 1970s. And that paper was outside my ability to buy it. It's so expensive because it's a special paper. And only those and such as those ever got to use it. And again, photography has become that again because the papers that are available now for professional photography is very expensive. And it's taken it out of the darkroom in the house that once existed. Now, I find that a bit of a drawback because I just loved working in the darkroom, creating prints. Brilliant. Just loved it. But I couldn't afford it. Very few people could afford it. And once you've done it, you would understand when I say, well, you really need to have full control of the process from beginning to end, so that you get the photograph that you want, like those photographs in the kitchen. I got those because I was in charge of the printing. I did the printing myself. And if you don't have that, it's a nightmare, or it can be a nightmare. But I'm glad to hear there's still at least one left. There used to be quite a few.
There used to be a specialist in Paisley, Deaton's Cameras. I don't know if you're...
Oh, hey, that David Dane, I knew that man very well.
But they closed down. There's a small
Oh,
version of that shop which does prints and things now. So if
I
anybody
miss
in the town knew, it would probably be them for
Yeah.
getting developed spools and whatnot. But I was
Oh, but-
looking, obviously, at proper courses like an HND or whatever, an HNC. However, because the kids are at home, I can't really do that at this point. But I
No,
can
no.
do night classes, and I can teach myself. It's a hobby at this point, and if nothing else comes out other than learning how to use the camera properly, then so be it. But
Have you got a camera?
there's one that I'm looking at. It's obviously, as things have evolved, it's not one with a film, it's a digital camera, but there's one that I was looking at, and I
Sure.
would need to get it in finance because they're not exactly cheap, but it's an investment for the family as well, for the kids, taking pictures, videos of them.
Sure.
So, and it's something that gets me out the house as well. Something,
Well, that's true.
something interesting for me.
Absolutely.
And away from politics. Well, you could take pictures of politicians, I suppose,
Okay.
become like a Scottish paparazzi.
Do you
But
want to become my personal photographer, do you?
hang about outside Holyrood, like watching them picking their nose and playing pocket billiards and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, I'll let you be my personal driver and photographer. How about
Oh,
I
DJ
wouldn't
is,
trust her driving. Like,
you can shush. You might need to, so shush.
that?
But no, he's good at taking photos as well. Like I've suggested in the past, maybe something like that for him, but it's obviously not something that he's keen on at this point. But I think it would be something that would be interesting to him.
The problem has always been, as I found out, you can't make a living at it in Scotland. You just can't. We don't have the history for it. It's not like Europe. Europe has a history for it.
Unless you're doing wedding photography or something like that, where you're selling packages.
Well, I did that,
Did you?
and I couldn't do it. I had to give up my premises because the limitation is you can only do one wedding on a Saturday. Because most couples, they want to get married at 2:00. Well, if you're at a wedding at 2:00, you can't do one any other day, any other time in that Saturday afternoon. So you can only do one wedding.
Some of
That's
these
what
some of these photography packages are about £1,000 each, though, so they're making their money from one Saturday. They're quite expensive now.
Well,
yeah, they are.
all I can add on to that is when I was doing it, I was competing with 3 other photographers, and we all had premises in the town. But I think what you're talking about is people who don't have premises.
Yep.
Yeah. So they've got virtually no overheads. And if it's digital,
They could take as many photos as they want to get the right shots.
correct.
They're not wasting film.
So it's a different market
Different game.
today than it was when I was doing it.
There's not very many overheads other than the camera if you're a freelance wedding photographer. So you just turn up, other than you charge them your expenses. And when we went to Arica, there was a couple who, I'm assuming that they'd just get engaged, or they were filming pictures at the bit where we were. Do you remember this? Did you?
Yeah.
There was a couple by the water, and they had a photographer, and they were obviously staging pictures. So I'm assuming it was either they'd just get married or they just get engaged, and this was like the announcement pictures or whatever for their family. But to get a photographer to go to the middle of nowhere, you have to pay a lot of money. And if you're getting like a wedding package or anything like that, if you've got a wee business, a lot of them, they start about £1,000. So it's quite, if you've paid 2 or 3 grand for a really good quality digital camera, that's your expenses. Do 2 or 3 weddings, you've paid your camera off. Plus,
and on top of that as well, like the guy, one of the boys that I was working with last year, he got married, and the package, I can't remember exactly how much they paid, but from memory, it was like nearly 2 grand they paid this guy, right? But it was sort of the same thing that PBC was alluding to there. There was a lot of like early photos of them being places together, because it was all going to come into a bigger picture, so to speak. And then obviously he filmed and photographed the wedding, and then he was paid additionally on top of that for editing their wedding video, which I've seen the video. It's very, very well done. But he was paid for his time for the photos early on that he was taking. He was paid for videoing as well as taking photos of the event itself. And he was also additionally paid for his time to edit it all together. So they got a compilation of photos of the wedding, and then they got the video package as well. Those three things combined, the photos, the video, and all the editing, the guy made a killing. Like, you know, so if you're doing that, even if you're just doing that nowadays, I mean, I know it's changed days now, the way that technology evolves and whatnot. If you're doing that if you're doing that Saturday of every month, you could be talking about 6-7 grand at the end of the month, you know. And if you're doing that as a sort of side hustle, you might have a job through the week, you know. But if you're doing that and then if you've got that at the weekend, wow, you'll be driving a Mercedes by the end of the year, man, you know. So
Sure.
there is some arguments to be made that it's unfortunate that it moves away from the craft, as it were, you know, its most native of roots. But at the same time, with the development of technology, and whatnot, the way that people can use digital photography, and then they can also combine that with their skills if they've got them with editing and whatnot.
Sure.
You can make a lot of money doing that, you know. So
Baby photos as well, like people taking their kids
Yeah.
along for like maybe their newborn baby, and then it's maybe every second month or whatever, like a progress wee milestones. See a lot of people putting these up, or like my niece gets quite a lot of pictures taken with her daughter, and it'll be the two of them because she's a single parent, and all the pictures that I've ever seen have been just her and her daughter, and they maybe dress up in some sort of fancy outfit. The two of them will have something similar, sort of reflecting what the other one's wearing. And they're
Sure.
quite artistic pictures. They're not my taste. I probably wouldn't do that. But that's obviously what she's wanting to do to mark these times with her daughter. But I know she's paid quite a lot of money for photos over the years. And I know that I have with my kids. Like, I always wanted a picture of them when they were first born. Then at 6 months. And then when I had it for one, I had to get it for all of them. So my kids have got pictures at the same sort of stages. Just because I did it for one, I felt I had to do it for all of them to mark these.
PBC, I have a suitcase filled with photographs of my son because my late wife was exactly the same. I used, kid you not, I used a 35 exposures on Samuel every week for years. But that's women for you.
Well, I remember the health visitor saying you'll take loads of pictures of your first, but by the time you get to the last one, there'll be hardly any because you'll be scunnered taking photos of your kids. Like, well, so what? But no, I think having these memories,
Oh,
even
important. Of course
even
they are.
looking at old pictures that people have taken from their holiday snaps, like having an actual photo in your hand's different to looking at one on a screen. So different having a physical picture.
Yeah, I
Even
agree
if
with
it's not the best quality picture, if it's one that's been taken on one of these wee spools that you used to put in a camera, or these throwaway cameras,
you. Yeah,
flicking through a photo album, a physical album, is completely different to sitting on a computer clicking on a mouse or scrolling through your phone.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I've got quite a few nice pictures on my phone that I've taken over the last year and a half or whatever of places we've been. But that's what the thing, they're on my phone. Nobody sees them
Yeah, I
other
know.
than me when I'm scrolling through it. So I'd like to be able to get some pictures, and if there's any that are really nice, get them printed off.
I would say I've got hundreds of colour transparencies that nobody ever sees. Simply because I personally, as a photographer, just love colour transparencies. And But there's nothing to beat high quality black and white print.
I do like black and white. I think black and white adds something to a picture.
It certainly does. It certainly does. But I think you'll be hard pushed, though, to be honest, to get quality papers to print onto.
I think you can
I don't know the market anymore. I've not looked at
see. I
it.
think nowadays you can upload your photos to some websites, and then they'll print them to like canvases. If you wanted, like, say, like a loch scene, if you had a big, beautiful loch in a mountain range that you went somewhere for the day and you captured this perfect sunrise or sunset, you could get that blown up onto a canvas.
Yeah,
You would
Yeah, you
pay
can.
through the nose. You'd pay through the nose to get it done.
sure.
I think you can outsource that to other people, but then you're not in control of, obviously, the printing stage of that yourself.
Yeah, that's canvas prints you're talking about. Yeah, used to do all that, so I did. I lost everything. The bag took everything.
It's a shame.
Yeah, including all my photographic camera equipment, electronic flash units. Lost it
And that
all.
they're not cheap either. Camera, like lenses, flashes, microphones, all these bits and bobs that go on the cameras.
Well, without wishing to sound like a snob, I had the best. I had a Hasselblad, which is the best 2.5-inch camera in the world. It's just, not that this is a recommendation, DJ, but it is the one that NASA is supposed to take to the moon. But they are the highest quality because they're handmade.
NASA and the moon. Come on now.
Ah, I know.
To the film studios in Arizona or wherever it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I had. I only say that because it's a reference that most people know.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it doesn't mean very much. I looked after Helen died. I had a look at the costs to buy the modern equivalent of what I had, and that's just the body. You still have to buy the lens and the backs. It was, I'll go back 30 years now. It was close to 30,000. So I have no idea what
Jeez.
it is.
Have you looked
Jesus.
recently?
No.
I was the camera
Sorry.
that I was looking at a telephoto lens for it, and it was 22.5 grand just for the lens.
Wow.
Well, you pay that for a Hasselblad lens as well.
However, there's a firm in Glasgow that's not just Glasgow, but the nearest one to me is Glasgow. They've got shops all over the country, but they allow you to, say you were going up a mountain, you could hire the lens for the weekend so that you can decide if you want to buy it, and if you decide that you're then going to go ahead and get the lens, I think the cost of the rental comes off the purchase price of the lens.
Yeah.
But you're talking about expensive lenses.
You
At
always
least
are.
10, 15 grand. But you could borrow one for, I think, the rental on them's quite expensive, but compared to buying them, if you were maybe you were a sports photographer or you're photographing a wedding and you want a shot from like the distance of the full crowd or whatever, and you're looking for you could easily add that onto the cost of somebody's package if you were a professional and just hire it for the weekend, take it back.
Yeah. I just did that because I lost it all in the way that I lost it. I bought. It's bizarre. It's strange. Doesn't make any logical sense. But I bought myself a Western Euromaster light meter, which is a handheld light meter. That was the first thing I bought. And then I looked seriously at renewing the Hasselblad, but it was just beyond me to do it. So I bought myself a fairly cheap 35mm camera, which I still have. I've taken photographs on it. But no, I'm too old to invest that kind of money. And I certainly wouldn't go back to wedding photography, because I found that, and I never showed you them. The next time you're down at the house, I'll show you the portraits. And that's what I found about myself. I enjoyed and got more out of doing portrait work than wedding work. Age is against all that stuff, yeah. Too much of an investment at this age.
One of the things I like taking pictures of that might sound weird is mushrooms and fungi.
Well, the other thing I considered at the time, but never did either, was I considered buying myself a large format camera and concentrating on landscape. So that a camera like that would produce a negative 5 inches by 4 inches. But again, very expensive. You're talking, I don't know what it would be now, but back then it was thousands of pounds for the lenses. And it's sheet film, 5 by 4 inches sheet film. Very similar to what they used to use in Hollywood. But again, once you get to a certain age, it doesn't become a worthwhile investment, because you're not really going to live long enough to get your money back from it. So I never bothered. I made do with what I had. And I've produced a few photographs. You've seen a few of them. So, and beside all that, you really need a car as well to get to anywhere.
And the last thing you want to be doing is
Yeah,
walking about
especially
Greenock or Paisley, with an expensive camera on your neck.
You know, that's actually, now that you mention it, that's exactly what I did. We went on holiday when Helen was alive. And here's John walking about, strap. Here's you can't really see it. Here is the Hasselblad hanging from me. And I couldn't figure out why everybody was looking. That's what they were looking at. Because it's not something you see often.
No.
But there you go. And I don't tell you these things to be showing off. I'm not showing off. Mr. Dayton was very good to me when he was in business. He helped me quite a lot. So I was sorry when he went out of business.
I just wish there was more like that. Wex in Glasgow's quite good for going in and getting advice, and even if you've not bought from them, they're quite happy to entertain you. I've been in there speaking to them a couple of times because I've been sort of sizing up what I can afford and whatever. But even if you're not buying anything, they're quite happy to give you advice or tell you to come back in and speak to the specialists.
Sure.
So I would recommend them if anybody's local to Glasgow if they're looking for camera stuff. But there's nothing sort of in my town anymore. Like there used to be photography places, and there used to be places. Even the guy who took the most famous shots of Abraham Lincoln, he was from Paisley. Alex Gardner.
Yeah.
He was a Paisley photographer, and shush. And there's nothing to mark. Like this guy came from the town, took some of the most famous pictures that have ever been reprinted, and
yeah. But I think you have noticed on the high street the photographer whose name is cut in a stone.
Where's that? Is that up near where Leisureland was?
It's at the top of New Street.
Aye, New Street. There's a gap.
High Street.
Aye, is that where there's a gap in the buildings?
Where the YMCA used to be.
Aye.
You know where I am?
I know where you are.
Well, if you go to the High Street end and look up, you'll see the photographer's name cut in the stone.
I'll just go to Google Maps and have a look at the net.
Well, do that.
See if I can find it. These 2 seconds.
Very famous.
Because there used to be a lot of I think all my family had pictures taken. I can't remember the name of the guy, but a lot of my family had pictures taken with one of the photographers in the town.
Well, it could have been George Martin.
I'm just going to have a wee nosy.
Don't think it was John Davidson, but it could have been.
So where was it?
High Street.
Oh, I see it now. J. Douglas Ritchie.
That's it.
Aye.
Very famous. Well, that whole top part of that building, it may not be that now, but when I was at college and I went into business, that whole part of the building was a photographic studio.
I used to do judo in there.
Right.
In the YM.
Yeah. Well, he had a big studio, had a professional lady who retouched the colour prints. Oh, what a skill she had. Very good. Then there was Watson's round at County Square. Strathclyde Photography was at the top end of the high street, and I was on the high street, whereabouts, that would be where Burton's used to be.
Did you have a shop in Paisley?
Yeah, I had a studio in that's where I did my business.
Was it?
Yeah, Davidson Photography, High Street, Paisley.
Have you got any photos of your business from outside?
No.
No.
Never occurred to me to do it. I took it over, and there was no business there. It was just premises that was there, and I took it over. I got the keys handed to me. I took it over and built it up from nothing. And then the bank took that from me. And that's what happens in business.
Yeah, the banks just take everything.
Oh yeah, they were good at that. It took me years to pay it all off. Years and years and years. In fact, they started the financial decline of the Davison family. I was still paying it off when Helen died.
It's a shame. It's a shame how much they can take from people, because it didn't just take your profession, it took...
Oh, it took everything. Well, you see, a lot of it was my own ignorance of what was happening. Because every time I went in and said, I'm looking to buy such and such, and this is how it will help grow the business, they would say to me things like, so what's your turnover? What's your house worth? And what I didn't know was that they were taking legal documents out against the business and the house. And I only found that out where we tried to sell a house. That they had to get what they were due before we got anything, which meant when we sold the house, we got nothing.
That's awful.
And all the equipment went, and stuff that I could never afford to get again. So effectively that put an end to my photographic career. So I had to start all over again. But not in photography. I never advise anybody to go into business for themselves. Barely due to my own bad experience.
It's a risky game, like.
Oh yeah, but the only way that I think anyone should even think about it is what we've already said. And that is, if you can do it without premises, you can save yourself a lot of heartache.
Yeah.
But again, I've got to admit that the world is completely different from what it was when I was involved in photography. And I don't know anything about the modern photographic world commercially, whether it is now possible or not. I venture to suggest that it still isn't possible to make a living. But I'm prepared to be corrected on that front.
Even nowadays, it's veering away from photographs to AI. So you could be sitting where you are now, and I know you've got a green screen, but you could be sitting at the White House in a picture. Somebody could photograph you in the White House. You could be Joe Biden Mark II. And
In
you've
fact,
not left.
if you
You've not
think
left
about
your
it, I
house.
can do it myself. Yeah.
Like people are. You've got to wonder how much of what you're seeing now is just manufactured images and no real pictures, because they've been retouched or they've been AI has added bits in or taken bits off, because you can take power lines off, or you can add people in that are missing from the photograph.
Absolutely.
There's so much you can do nowadays with photography that you can't always trust what you're seeing in the picture to be accurate.
Well, if you think about it, if you had the proper photographs, you could create a group photograph of a wedding couple and all their dead relatives could be in it.
Yep.
And if you
That's
presented
a
it,
creepy thought.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's creepy, to be honest.
They were actually talking about, and it was Microsoft, I believe, that were talking about, based on like your social media posts and things like that, having like an AI version if somebody died. So uploading how you would speak, how you would answer your messages, and it would be like a voice version of your internet
that,
persona.
don't they? I mean, people actually go and see Elvis.
Yeah.
There's a Black Mirror episode. I don't know if anybody's seen Black Mirror, but there's an episode of that where this lassie loses her boyfriend and he dies, and then one of her pals says, I've got a solution, because she's missing him so much. And it's like text messages. She gets text messages based on how he would respond to her in the past. But then she says there's an upgraded version, and it's a doll version. looks exactly like the boyfriend, but then she gets fed up with it. So she sticks him in the bloody attic, and he's up there for like years. The novelty wears off and she's moved on.
Great. Oh boy. From the sublime to the ridiculous.
I was going to say, I mean, it's one of those things because what we've been speaking about there. So for me to like interject to like change the subject, like while I'm also sort of cautious of your time and whatnot, I'm not entirely sure it's the right course of action. But there was the only thing that I actually had thought of that I was going to bring up to you tonight on stream was something that from the stream that you did with your sister and PBC. So I do apologize for anybody who was, like, oh, what's he doing changing the subject? I do want to bring this up purely because I think it's something that's not spoken about enough in our circles, and that is there was a heavy emphasis on loneliness in the stream that your sister, and PBC were doing, and the sort of point that I said a few times in the chat was that there's not enough emphasis on younger people who experience loneliness. For the longest time, we've always known, obviously, that like elderly people, that's why there's a lot of things put in place. Like even my mother, for example, she does phone calls every morning to elderly people. Some are in their 80s, some are in their 90s and whatnot, some are in their 60s and 70s, but there's like a few of them that have been in and out of hospital and whatnot. And like the phone call that my mum makes to them, Jesus, sorry, I live near a road. You can hear the boy races possibly in the background. I do apologize. But
They have roads in the Highlands.
But my mum's phone call is like the only interaction that these people get a day, and obviously that's horrific to think about. But I think like a much darker point there is that when you hear of like loneliness charities or loneliness in general, there's never really much talk of people my age or younger. And I think this has become a new phenomenon. It wasn't really much of a thing back in the day, like my granddad's age and whatnot. Maybe it was, but if it was never really documented or reported about. But I do think that loneliness is becoming a much larger problem for much younger people, and it kind of goes unnoticed and unspoken about. And on top of that, the other thing that came into my head, and funnily enough, because I remember saying it to PBC at the time privately on Telegram, I was literally writing out in the chat that loneliness becomes an illness, and then your sister said it. Your sister said it live on the chat or on the stream even. But no, I kind of wanted to just apologize for derailing the stream, so to speak. But I did want to bring that up, that loneliness isn't just something that affects the elderly. It can affect people at any age, and I do think that that's something that should be spoken about more. Not necessarily right now. I just mean overall in general. You don't see much out there in the way of charities or community networking groups for younger people that experience that. So that was like the only thing that I took away from the stream that you three did the other week, where I didn't think it was spoken about enough. And that's not me having a pop. I just think that that needs to be spoken about more going forward in that domain, so to speak. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that. I think it's sad, really. I mean, obviously, I can speak from experience when I was younger, not so much now. I mean, to be fair, I said at the start of the stream, I don't have any friends at IRL, but that's merely through just a chain of circumstances. I had a massive group of friends when I was a teenager. We were like the group that you would always see photos of on Facebook, and we'd all be standing there in tracksuits like a bunch of dickheads, But
you're ignoring the fact that you've got 3 arms and 4 legs, and 2 heads. Maybe that's got something to do with the fact that you don't have friends. What do you think?
I don't know what that means. To be honest, I just mean, like, no, IRL, I don't have any friends.
It doesn't
bother me now. There's a lot of people out there No, like there's a lot of people out there that are younger than me or whatever, and like
Yeah.
they don't even leave the room.
Well,
You know?
you if you listen to the way my sister speaks about this, she's always on about it, always on about it, and she says exactly what you just said. There is no attention, there's no money, there is no attempt made to do anything. Because, as you said, and she says exactly what you just said, because loneliness is something that affects people of my age, when that isn't necessarily true, but can be.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that I wanted Alison and BBC together, so that they could bring stuff like that up, because this is where I feel, and I'm bringing us back to politics, is where we can become involved in the community somehow, if we can find ways to become involved in the community. And that will gather political support when we are seen to be useful and helpful members of our communities in which we live.
Yeah, like your your chess club thing that you'd set
Yeah.
up, like stuff like that, you know.
Yes.
See, a lot of people speak about like these active clubs and things like that the guys have got in these nationalist circles. There's nothing for women. And if you're a mum who's stayed at home with your kids, and I've been lonely, I've been stuck in the house, and during lockdowns, I was in the house a lot during that period of time with no other contact. And when you start looking at things from a political point of view, where you're not agreeing with the majority of people out there because you've started to learn about how corrupt things are, you're even more isolated because nobody, even your family, don't want to listen to you. And my mum thinks sometimes I'm off my head because she doesn't believe, not that she doesn't believe what I'm saying, she can't fathom that the government would do the things that they are doing, and not just through incompetence, but through structured derailing this country and derailing the lives of the people in the country and the people that contributed to building the country. They're quite happy to flood us with migrants, take away our culture, take away our people, and they think it's just accidental, that it's just crap politicians, or it's always been corrupt. But to the extent where kids are mutilating themselves, that never happened when I was younger, to the point where kids are hating themselves because they're white or because their ancestors maybe owned a bit of land, not even ones that owned slaves, but if they maybe had a business in the past that made money. We're being taught, and there was a film I watched recently, which I'll stick on my Telegram, I already have, but it talks about this has been brought about to destabilise all these nations, and it's not just happening here. So as much as we hate SNP and the things that they're doing, it's happening in all the Western nations. They're trying to subvert all the cultures to make them this homogenized blob of global homo, just drones. They want worker drones that are infertile and only the elite will be able to procreate. But when you start talking about this sort of stuff to other people, they think you're off your head. So you become even more isolated unless you have people who have similar political views. And that's where things like Telegram or Twitter have been helpful for me, because I was in the house with kids, trying to speak to my family. Nobody wanted to listen. And my only outlet was to post things online. And obviously then you start to meet other people with similar opinions. Maybe not physically meet them, but you meet them in a, you're having the same sort of thoughts. I went to rallies for that reason, because I wanted to meet physical people and be able to speak freely. So I would go to the anti-lockdown things. I've been to quite a few different sort of political things over the years, but it's something that I'm in. If I'm interested and I'm passionate about something, I'll go along and I'll try and get involved in it. Because speaking to people in person is so much better than speaking to them online.
Absolutely. But that everyone is encouraging us to continue onward. So we will continue onward on this subject because I, like my sister, and like all of us, I suppose, uh, regard this as a priority subject. It sits alongside, and I know she's involved in this as well, is
Yeah.
the young men who get sent to prison because they've done this, that, and t'other. They come out, uh, and there's nothing. There's no support network. There's nothing, and they're only out 5 minutes, and they're up to their bad habits again, and they're back inside, and this goes on and on and on. And that
Mhm.
has to be broken, that cycle. Now, I'm not saying I've got the answer because I don't have the answer, but have a willingness to try and find an answer. And that's the difference. And that should be the difference for all nationalists. We should
Yeah.
be willing to try and find solutions, or at least try something that is a solution.
And I think,
No, I agree.
kind-
I mean, there's to PBC's point as well, because like that's why I pulled up on another tab there because she was on about like there's nothing really out there for women explicitly, but in this instance, there actually is something out there for men. And I've heard about it before because I remember posting about it on my Telegram ages ago a few times because it's something I just find admirable. Really, it's a you might have heard of it. It's called the Men's Shed.
Oh,
They're
yeah,
dotted
men
up and
shed.
down
Yeah,
the
I'm
country.
a member of
Yeah, and
that,
I
by
mean,
the way.
are you? Well, I
Yeah,
mean, there was this really heartwarming. So I was working in Forest a couple of months ago, which is just about 10 minutes away from where William lives. Believe it or not, we live quite close, despite the fact he's not classified as a Highlander, which is bizarre. But this old man came up to me because I was labouring on this job that I was on, and it was sort of in the city centre. I say city, the town centre, sorry, of Forest. Um, and where we were, there was like we had a skip and whatnot. And this old man came up to me and asked me, "Any wood that we're planning on skipping, can we keep it aside? Because he's part of the men's shed and he would like to take it for the guys there." So that's what I did. And then when one of my last days there, here he came, he appeared. Uh, and he started coming back and forth, taking away the wood himself. I obviously couldn't leave the premises because I would probably get my
sure.
balls chewed by my boss, but like he did. And I mean that sort of warmed my heart in a really like weird way, just because
Yeah,
I've talked about this on and off periodically throughout the years. Like the men's shed, though, like the whole premise of the men's shed is just for people, for men, young men, but not explicitly young men, but it is mainly young men that attend these things who are experiencing loneliness and whatnot, to go to these things to sort of
yeah,
converse with other men and whatnot. They might be completely different people from all straight, colors of cloth and stripe and whatnot, but they all can relate on that one thing, that they're suffering from loneliness, which to David Williamson of Lauren's point, it does lead to other things if it's not sort of curtailed. So there is things like that are out there, but they are few and far between. And
they
it's
are.
quite sad, really, because, and like, don't get me wrong, I hope, John, you didn't think that I was like coming at you about the stream, because like I've said to you before, because your sister appeared with you years ago on your stream, and I was in that comment section uh, commending your sister, and I remember at the time saying at the time that my mom does something similar in terms of like phoning elderly people whatnot.
Yeah,
Like the only thing that I was getting across there was that, and it wasn't even directed at you when you were on the stream, it was just in general to the people in chat. There was such less discussion about younger people, not just men, but it's something
no,
that seems to affect men more than it does women.
well,
But
it
it's such
does.
a problem that it's becoming such a more rife problem
Yeah,
in our world nowadays. Western men. I mean, when you look at suicide rates and whatnot,
yeah,
I mean, how many of these suicides that are occurring for young men, and they're white men, how many of them are
yeah,
occurring as a spiral from the sort of it comes from loneliness and whatnot. you know, and I genuinely sympathize with these people, and I can legitimately empathize with them because I've been there in terms of loneliness and
Of
whatnot.
course
It's
you
a
have.
horrible place. I mean, I went from the age of 17 years of age to 24 with absolutely no contact with the outside world apart from going to my job, or my jobs, I should say. You know, I mean, didn't have any friends. You know, I never went to birthday parties, never had birthday parties, never went on holiday, never went out in New Year. I used to sit in my room. That's all I did. And it started to get to me, you know. And how many other men are out there that are like that are just desperate for a friend, as sad as it sounds, you know? And there's nothing. There's no attention that's focused on it at all. I mean, you even see the same thing with dogs, for fuck's sake. If you've got two, pardon, oh, I've done it, John, I'm sorry. If you've got two dogs and one dies, what happens to the other dog? You see an instant decline in that dog.
Oh, it doesn't
Yeah.
last long.
No.
Doesn't last long.
So
Same with people.
exactly the
Exactly
same.
same with people.
You've got two grandparents, one passes away, the other one declines, you know?
Yeah. No, I don't take anything bad from what you said. It's too important. And Alison would totally agree with you if she was here listening to this. She would be buoyed up by what you're saying, because she says the same thing all the time. The trouble is, or part of the trouble is, we don't have funding for it. It's a sad fact that everything costs money. I mean, she runs a brew buddies group, which is just old folk, and mainly women, I might add, who come to their office, sit in their office, and Alison and her co-workers make big pots of tea, and they've got buns and cakes, and they sit and talk. And that's all they do, is sit and talk. And there are women in this brew buddies group who are out of the house for the first time in years because they never had anyone and they had nowhere to go. And that's what I say. If you were in contact with me regularly, DJ, you would hear me say that. People will say to me, "Are you not out?" I'll say, "No. Where can I go? Where is there in this town for me to go? Because I'm not a drinker. So where can I go?" Well, nowhere is the answer. And there are many, many other people just like that who are longing for companionship, human communication, and it's not there. But I was going to take you back a lifetime to show you, if it needed to be shown, that this never used to be the case. Now, my mother was made a widow at 28. I was 6.5. And when she was a widow, she had places to go all the time. Every night of the week, she could have been out. What is that? Well, there used to be a thing known as a cooperative. And in those days, the cooperative was a force to be reckoned with. And they ran all sorts of women's groups for widow women, for single women, for married ladies, all sorts of different activities. Well, when the cooperative was brought under attack and destroyed, all of that disappeared. Those networks ceased to be. That's why you don't see them anymore. And it's all of that needs to be rebuilt. And who's going to rebuild it but nationalists? See, I'm on my high horse now.
People underestimate the power of speech and just speaking to another person.
Yeah.
To have somebody listen to you vocalise what's on your mind, whether it's how nice the sky looks, or whether it's you're feeling depressed or family problems or whatever it is, or even just telling somebody a joke.
Yeah.
People underestimate having an audience, whether it's an audience of one or an audience of many. If you're on your own and you've got nobody to talk to and nobody to feedback off, it is very isolating.
Yeah. It's debilitating, and eventually it will kill you. It will drive you to your death.
Becomes an illness.
Yeah, it becomes an illness, DJ, and then eventually it
That's
kills you.
like that's the thing that I think doesn't get addressed enough. Like in general, is that it does become like they say loneliness is a killer, but why is it a killer? Because it becomes an illness. See when you start to look into it, like I mean, not going to go into the specifics right now, obviously, but like when you start to look into loneliness, like it starts off as just its symptoms. You yearn for uh, conversation, you yearn for people because we're social animals, aren't we? At the end of the day, but when it starts to get worse and worse and worse, it actually can reduce your life expectancy. It makes you more susceptible to illnesses and whatnot. In general, it's like a cancer, really.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
it legitimately is like a cancer. Like, and it's a horrible thing that so many people. You don't even realize when you walk past somebody in the street. Obviously, it's the same with anything. You don't know what they're going through and whatnot. But it's a sad indictment of society at this point in time when so many people. And I think it's a sort of it showcases, if nothing else, the modern world because so many youngsters now they don't go out like they used to and go out and play and whatnot. Everybody's inside, whether it's school and then or work life. But when they come home, they're not doing anything. They're just inside all the time. But if they don't have that sort of network of friends where they can occasionally go and do things with, like they've got no life,
Yeah.
They've got absolutely no life. And I think that, I mean, I don't think there's any statistics out there whatsoever to sort of validate the point, but I would hedge a bet like that. There's quite a lot of people out there are probably showcasing those symptoms in this day and age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
What
that's
I
why
would say,
OnlyFans and whatnot are so high. That's why OnlyFans models make such high profits and whatnot because men, for example, they can't find a woman the way that they used to, so they're so down in the dumps that they're resorting to parting with their money
Sure.
to talk to some random woman online who has no interest in them, is just looking for money. Stuff like that. It's just sad, really, where we're at
I,
as a society.
I
Could,
think a
could
lot
I
of these. I
could
think
I
a lot
just
of these.
interrupt just for a second? Treble M, I'm going to go on till 11:30. So if you wouldn't mind reminding me when we get to 11:30, please. I think this is too important for me to just jump out. Okay?
I think a lot of the kids that are LGBT and all this sort of nonsense just now, they're lonely kids that have got nothing else in their life and they're seeing a flock of people who are also lonely and they feel part of a group because some of them are autistic, some of them's got other mental sort of things going on in their heads and they're seeing their tribe, that's their tribe of people, or they're being pushed towards believing that these other people, misfits, in the 50s, they might have been greasers or whatever, in the 90s and the early thousands, they might have been goths or whatever. They would just have been people that wore different clothes to stand out and become their own wee sort of sect of society. But now they've been shoehorned into taking puberty blockers or taking surgical alterations to their body by a corrupt education system, a corrupt media, and a corrupt society. And these people think that they've found their folk. And what they are, they've got mental problems to start with because they've got this loneliness or they've got this autistic trait where they feel trapped in their own body. But then they go and they get these surgeries and they realise they can't be the blue fairy, what's that, the Peter Pan moment. They're never going to be the real boy. They're never going to turn into the thing that they want. So it's a fairy tale that they're being sold, and these kids are being left when there's no help for these kids. There's been no long term studies on what the mental effects of this pushing all these children into this has been. But I think part of the reason a lot of these kids are going to that at this point in time is also the fact what DJ was saying, that kids are sitting in their rooms. The only contact they have with their friends is through the PlayStation, where they're chatting online, or through WhatsApp or Facebook or some other social media, TikTok or Snapchat. They're not actually meeting in the park anymore. They're not
No.
going to the cinema. They're not going for a coffee. They're not playing pool. They're playing things online. And when they're sitting online consuming, they get adverts for things. They watch videos. They see celebrities advertising songs and whatever. And they're being pushed towards this thing that they identify with. They say they identify as this or that, which to me, they've found their tribe of people because they're all lost souls and they've been capitalised on by corrupt pharma and the media, who just, they're using them for their own political gain.
I totally agree with you. All of that, everyone would agree with. The trouble is, my personality won't allow me to let it go there, because what I naturally want to do is reach out and fix the problem. That's my curse, if you like, in life. Is I see a problem and I want to fix it, and that should be the goal of every nationalist or every person who is concerned about their community and their country. We should be all trying to find solutions. Some will work, some will not work, but we all have to try and find solutions so that this, what you've so vividly described here, doesn't become a disgusting swamp that overcomes us and overcomes all of these children. That's what we should be aiming for as an alternative to trying to gain power when we don't have the numbers. That's what I've been trying to do. But I'm only one person. I can't do it all myself. I need everyone to help. And we need solutions.
And we need to engage people.
I would
young.
say part of the solution is highlighting the problem, if nothing else, because to be honest, just to your point there, John, for every one John Davison, there's 30, 40 people who don't highlight these issues. You know what I mean? And that's part of the problem in many respects. There's far too many people, whether that be offline or online. And I do think as well, just on a wee side note, that like the online sphere, so to speak, provided that you are like, and if we're talking about me, but it's not limited to me, but I'll just use me as an example so nobody can accuse me of like, name calling or whatever. Provided you're highlighting legitimate things that you can prove, you're doing just as much work as somebody who's IRL with their face out and whatnot. But for every one of you, there is 30, 40 people who are the same way politically minded, but they aren't highlighting issues like that. And I think that's part of the problem. So I would simply say, to your point there, that highlighting the problems is part of the solution. And that might not sound like much, but it's a damn sure, it's a lot better than what many other people are doing now. I mean, the internet world, for example, is just full to the brim of what we can do to take power and whatnot. And there's just nothing. I mean, maybe in my instance, I could do a bit more in terms of, because I've made it known for some time, you know this, and PBC knows it as well. There's only really two things that I give a shit about that I can speak so passionately about, and that is Scottish demography. Not even Scottish politics, but Scottish demography. Like, it concerns me, but at the same time, I'm very much an ethnocentric person. The second of all is suicidality or / alcoholism and drug deaths and whatnot in Scotland. Like these are two things that I can speak very passionately about. Maybe I could do a bit more on my own channel, maybe speak about these things a bit more I don't know. Maybe that's something I could consider going forward. I have done it in the past. I've done multiple streams where I've spoken about it and whatnot, but maybe I could do a bit more in that instance. But I think that people just don't. These aren't things that people care about, and that's what annoys me. Like, there's so many self-declared nationalists, so to speak, where today we're going to talk about what we're going to do to take power. Like, and I know I'm just like boiling it down to the most like cliche nonsense, but it's true. Like, so many streams that I've watched in the past, and they never address like the real issues, like what's affecting our young people. It's just the constant sort of cliche nonsense about power and shoulda, woulda, couldas in regards to election cycles and whatnot. And I mean, it's just not interesting. It's not interesting, and it's not helpful, really. So yeah, just to sort of round up my summary of that, for every one John Davison, there's 30 other
Well,
people don't
I'll
do
give
it.
you a little bit of ammunition should you need it. If you look back at history to the 1930s, you would see that political party had a huge number of people doing exactly what we are now talking about. Because the biggest part of that party was socialists.
Mhm.
People forget that. All the important, practical, positive things that helped working class people back then came from the socialist side of the party. Right.
Yeah.
What would you like to finish on here, BBC? I take it the three of us are in agreement here.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
BBC.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
No, so you're
Would you like to have a finishing statement to make?
I just think it's important for people to keep talking and trying to engage people round about them. You never know what your kind words might make a difference to somebody's day. So,
Exactly. Would
and it
would
costs
both of
nothing.
you? Well, would both of you be interested in coming back on again? But I don't mean next week to talk about this very subject, and I'll see if I can get Alison to come
yeah.
on as well.
Yeah.
The reason I say it a bit iffy on Alison is because I'm never quite sure of what her program is. She does so many other things outside work. Uh, but she'll be chuffed as hell that we spoke about this at the length that we've spoken about it.
Well, the same thing that I've said to Sensum. I mean, I'm getting. By the way, if Sensum, you do watch this at a later date, mate, and you get to this point, rein it in, mate. You're annoying me now. Every single time Samson messages me about streams, he's like, "Oh, are you free?" I'm like, "He's been told." And I'll tell you because you've not heard this. I'll relay the same message that I have to relay to Sensum 24/7 because he seems to be inept at remembering things. I am free any day of the week, bar the weekends, because I'm usually with my missus or PBC, whatever.
Okay,
So you don't need to worry about, penciling me in.
availability.
Yeah.
Right.
Provided it's a Tuesday. Yeah. Because obviously you do Tuesdays and Fridays, but Friday I'll
Exactly.
probably be away. But yeah, any Tuesday, you don't need to worry about that. Like, I'm free. I hope you're
Well,
listening, Sen.
I think so. I think seriously that we have managed to, if not got a ball rolling, we've certainly got uh, a subject that we can visit regularly and revisit regularly and try and work out strategies that we can implement whenever possible. So it's important then, that being the case, that we don't let it go now.
I concur with that. I like absolutely.
Yep.
And you know yourself, John, it's something I've talked about. Even the
Oh.
last stream that I appeared on, like it's sign, it's just bothered me. Even like, every year, the statistics in Scotland come out and they just horrify me.
And I always remember, I mean, I took it this way, that you came to me in this channel when you wanted to make a public statement about your own self.
Yeah.
And I took that as an honour that you picked me for that. So I feel that we have a connection beyond the obvious. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
That and the fact you remind me of my granddad, but you know.
well,
I would say, well, you know, my granddad's probably a bit more volatile, politically speaking, as I've said. But yeah, we'll let that lie. No, definitely would do this again to speak more on this subject. Like, if you could find some availability for your sister, that'd be nice.
yeah,
Absolutely.
oh, she'll be over the moon when I tell her that what we have been discussing and how keen everyone is to try and find something as a solution. Budgie's asking for an extension on the music front.
Well, when you do
Tonight, my
play
friend.
out with your music, I'll just say I will probably have to jump out. Like, until I can't go into the backstage because obviously at the time, like, I have to be in bed by 12, like, just because I've got work
Okay.
in the morning.
Okay.
But
DJ,
yes,
do you want me to ask him what we were talking about if I go backstage in?
what was that? I already mentioned my gift to him.
No, not that, about the visit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I already mentioned
Right,
it.
right. I don't know that yet.
Yeah.
No bother. Okay,
It's going to be John's next stream, folks. He's going to be rocking my granddad's my granddad's I don't know what do you call it, like
a waistcoat. It's a waistcoat.
Yeah, be rocking one of my granddads. Yeah.
Well, Budgie, I'll tell you what I'll do with you. I'm not going to play it tonight, but I will play it on Friday. It's later than I normally finish. I wanted to keep it going. I didn't want to lose what I felt we had started here. So I did that extra time. So if you don't mind, if you remind me on Friday, I'll play it in the middle of the stream. If that's okay. So, any last words, folks? Let me bring on the music.
No, just have a good week.
I will just that, and I will have to abruptly leave so I can get my dog sorted and whatnot. But very much appreciate being invited on, and I'll see you next time, hopefully.
Absolutely.
And PPC, you're okay, you.
I'm okay. That's high praise.
You're all right. Bye-bye.
Right,
bye. Oh, my. So, the last words then, PPC.
No, I'll be able to stay backstage for a few minutes, but
Sure. Okay.
I'll need to head after that.
Sure.
Keep.
No problem.
It's obviously getting late.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll remove you from the stream. And get me here. And see if we can do something with this thing. So, folks, I hope you've enjoyed it today. I know it was a bit here and there in places. But I feel as though, well, and I'm really pleased with the progress we made on the subject of loneliness. It really is important. So you look after yourself, folks, and give it some thought. You might come up with some possible solution. And I'll speak to you all, hopefully, on Friday. So look after yourself, and as I like to say, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until Friday, 9 o'clock, God willing, we'll speak again. Enjoy the music.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides a fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together
But
now,
love's much more
so much more
than we can know.
than we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
What a very important glow.
in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul, have some consequence. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now,
But we're much more
so much more
than we can know.
than we can ever possibly know.
We are one small glow
What a very, very important
in
glow.
the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow.
Take care, folks, and we'll speak real soon. Bye just now.